All right, Matt Light here in studio. I'm Butch Stearns. Let's talk some football. This time of year, I always say it this way. The teams that want to win the month of March, the Patriots focus on winning the month of February. How do you look at free agency? Because right now, the same thing happened that we all thought would happen. At the end of the first week, we'd look up and there'd be 7 or 8 names that, honestly, I cover the sport. I didn't even know who they were. And the Patriots do this every year.
Right. Well, I think there's – so 2 things come into free agency or this time of year and leading up to it. One, don't be surprised when they don't make any big move. I mean, people always want to hit this panic button. Oh, we had an opportunity to get this guy and we didn't get him. You know, or they brought this guy in and they ended up not getting a deal. Something must have gone south. Guys don't like playing here. Hey, look, he's been doing this for a long time. You know, I don't put a whole lot into the free agent realm in terms of either winning or losing because none of that stuff matters until you get to about September, right? Even in training camp, if you went out there and paid big money and got all these great names that were available or perceived needs for the team, they may be terrible in August. And you know what happens in August? They cut and they run and they bring in the next guy. And he's going to look for the draft to really gain, you know, in some areas that they feel as an organization they need to make an improvement or they have a void. And the guys that they lost, yeah, those guys were impactful. Those guys made a difference in the 2018 season. 2019 is a whole different ballgame.
Let me ask you about Trent Brown. What type of year did he have last year when you watched him?
He had a consistent year, especially for a big guy who didn't have, you know, that kind of a resume coming in, stepped into an organization where they're going to ask him to do a lot of things and they're going to throw a lot at him, especially for a guy at that position who has to protect somebody in the heat that came, you know, with that position. So I think he did a good job. I think there were definitely things that he looked at and said, man, I wish I could have done that better, especially early. I think he settled into a pretty good role, and at the end, I think he was a part of them winning in the playoffs and when it mattered most. So he's a huge human being, and definitely I think he was worth his time here in New England. I don't know that he's worth what the Raiders are paying him, but God love him for getting it. I think hats off to him and congrats because, you know, as a player, you want to see that for everybody.
How are they going to replace their starting left tackle that they won a Super Bowl with?
Well, look, number one, they can shuffle some guys around. I mean, don't think for a minute that they're not sitting there and on paper saying, well, we can always move Cannon to the left. Right? It's something that he can do. He's athletic. He's a big body. He's obviously proven to be highly effective, especially when he's healthy.
You think they'll do that from afar?
I think that it's something that they have to consider at this point. I also believe that you have an Isaiah Wynn who's been able to now really understand that system. I mean, you're hurt, you feel out of it, but at the end of the day, you're in that system whether you're playing or not, and you're taking those mental reps. He's going to gain a lot from having a little bit more time to hopefully step in and make an impact early on. But where are they going to ultimately put him? What's going to be the best fit for him? He could be an interior guy. He could be a right tackle. He could be a left tackle. So they have options, and that's the only thing that Bill really cares about. How many things can I do with the guys that I have here, the guys that I can rely on, and who do I believe in? And they may not have all that figured out right now, but by the time they get about 3/4 of the way through training camp, I think you'll see that shake out pretty well. They've been able to do it, especially at that position, so I don't really worry about it too much.
What was your first thought when the Patriots traded for Michael Bennett?
Interesting. You know, look, again, value add. Bill looks at the board and says, okay, where can I get the best value and still be respectful to the rest of this team and the needs that we have and everything else? So if you look at it from that perspective, it's a win. How are people going to treat him in Foxborough if he chooses to not acknowledge, you know, the men and women that serve this country, no matter what side of the fence you're on? The bottom line is it's a controversial thing to do, and why do you want to bring that to an organization like this? And I think that will be interesting to see how that plays out. Nobody's challenging him as a person, but there's a culture here that they worked really hard to develop, and I'm not sure that, you know, that situation is going to be easily solved.
So specifically, he's already said if he's on this team when it starts that he's going to stay in the locker room for the national anthem. He says, we haven't heard from the team and we probably won't, but he says that he's had discussions with the team and they're fine with it. You buying all that?
Well, it's hard to have a discussion with a team, number one. I think you can say that he had discussions with
he's going to sit down
coach.
and talk politics with Bill Belichick and Tom Brady.
Right,
he wants to know why they support Trump. Oh, yeah, he's looking forward to that. Haven't you heard?
I know. I think if there's one thing that I do know, in that compound, in that stadium, there's one thing they sit down and they talk about. It's football. It's how it's always been. That's how it always will be. So that'll be what they focus on. That'll be what they do. And anybody that gets outside of that realm doesn't last long in Foxborough. So I think that's probably the answer to that question. But I do know one thing. People here in New England do not appreciate anything that doesn't hold our military and the men and women that serve this country at the highest level. So I think the writing's on the wall for that one.
I think people around here also don't appreciate or do appreciate the name Patriots on the front of the jersey and what that's meant for a long time, the brand, the image, what it represents. And by doing that, you kind of threaten that, don't you?
Well, look, no one's come into this organization and been on an island. I mean, not even Revis, right? I mean, think about it. Who comes into this organization and says, this is how I do it? No, this is how we do it. This is the Patriot way. This is how the organization is won. It's a pretty good, proven model. I don't see one individual ever affecting that. So, again, I think that it's not a challenge to anybody's, belief when it comes to how we should treat other people, how we should interact as a country, how certain things have been dealt with in the past. Nobody's challenging that, and I think that that's really important for him to know, and at the same time to understand how this system has been built and how we do things here, and they'll do as much as they can to get that message across to him.
One other question about Bennett. You were on teams that brought in guys with baggage or perceived baggage. You had Randy Moss, you had Corey Dillon before him, you had Rodney Harrison, all guys that were viewed for different reasons with baggage. Is Michael Bennett different, or is it just modern day baggage?
Well, it's different because it's such a different climate. Look, this idea of social awareness and the issues that have plagued the NFL, whether it was the kneeling or, putting together and forming these committees for players to have a voice, these things are relatively new. I mean, these weren't the stories that came out about any of those other guys that had the perceived baggage. So it's a different cause, it's a different mindset, it's a different player today. But at the end of the day, you deal with all those things the same way. And that is the Patriots system. So, is it the same? No. Is he the same as some of those guys? Can you make that comparison? I don't think you can at all. But can they overcome that, and can they fix, that perceived problem? I think so.
Do you think Josh Gordon plays for the Patriots next year?
I hope so. Yeah, I really do. I think he's just an unbelievably talented guy. I think he's a guy that when he's in the locker room, a lot of heads turn because he has some really unique abilities, right? That said, he deals with a lot. He's got a lot going on, and as anybody knows that's ever dealt with anything, whether it's substance abuse or any kind of addiction or anything else, it takes time, and I think that given the right people around him and maybe some other people helping hold him accountable, he could be a guy that you see back in the field, and I hope we do see that.
Tom consistently says he's going to play till he's 45. Do you believe him, and do you think he does play 3 more years?
Why not? I mean, do we have a reason to doubt him?
No, but I guess the follow-up question would be this. It's the rare athlete that gets to go out on his own terms, both physically and performance-wise. It almost always, Father Time versus Time, does catch up with them. Do you think, I'd like to believe that he is going to go out on his own terms. I don't doubt him. How can you doubt him? Since 28-3, how can you doubt anything? But do you think he plays at a high level for 3 more years? Do you think he wins possibly 3 more Super Bowls?
I don't know why not. And I guess I would say this. You can throw all the historical data and just get rid of it. Throw it out the window. The Brett Favres of the world or anybody that's played at a high level for a long time, and then you see this, marketed drop in their performance, right? And the reason I say that is because we're not talking about one guy. We're talking about an organization. And I mean that not in the sense that Bill Belichick plays a game of football and it's his coaching that actually does the winning. His coaching is a big part of putting them in the position to have success. And so no matter what the situation is, whether it's a 45-year-old Tom Brady or a 39-year Tom Brady, it comes down to how they work all those things out together And that's why you have the ability for Tom to do what he's done for as long as he's done. It's not just one. If it was just him, he probably would have retired a few years ago, right?
Matt Light, always good to see you.
Thanks, brother.
All right, pal.